Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Freight Break. I am your host, Dan Lindsey. Welcome to the flagship podcast of the Broker Carrier Summit and the BCS Freight Network, where we break down freight-related topics in practical ways that actually helps freight professionals learn and grow their business. All right, so we have a fantastic show for you today. We have Ryan Mize with Sethmar Transportation with us. Let's go ahead and welcome him to the show.
How you doing today, Dan?
There he is. Doing well, my friend. How are you? It's been a while since we chatted.
Doing well. Yeah, it's been a minute.
Yeah, very, very cool. Thanks for joining us today. So lots going on in the transportation world recently.
A lot.
How have things been going in your world?
A lot on top of, that Thanksgiving hangover, kind of squeezing everything here before Christmas with the holidays and everything. So things are busy, but I always tell our team busy's good. I'd rather be busy than bored. So it's great. Everything's moving forward.
Busy is good, and you guys, you're in Kansas City, so you've had quite the football run.
Oh yeah,
it's been fun to watch you guys.
Yeah, it's been good. My wife and I, right after we got married, we decided our thing together before we started having kids was the Chiefs games. That was what we wanted to do. So we've had our first season with season tickets was Mahomes' first year as a starter. So We've been along for a serious ride. We enjoyed going out to all those games and tailgating, and it's been great.
What's the update on him? I know that they were going to have some more information. I think it was yesterday. I didn't see anything come out though.
They said it was a high ankle sprain. He didn't break anything. This is a weird part of the year because they've got in 11 days they've got 3 games. So they're going to play Saturday against Houston, and then they turn around 4 days later and play at Pittsburgh, which are 2, probably playoff teams. Right. So we'll see. I think the pulse around Kansas City right now, and what I'm hoping for is I'd like to see Carson Wentz play. He's a formidable backup for us, so I'd like to see him play it on Saturday. And if we can beat Houston and some other things fall, maybe we lock up that 1 seed and you can continue to rest Mahomes. But we'll see, man. You don't count him out ever. He might have to lose the ankle for us to be kind of wondering what's going on. But it's
he's like one of those guys where to hell with the ankle, man. He's just gonna do his thing. He's gonna go out there and play as hard as he can.
It's crazy. Yeah, it really is crazy. Our kids are so lucky. They're so spoiled here in Kansas City because they don't really know losing football, and we did that well for a long time. So it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun. We're looking forward to a Saturday game. Kind of gets everything going to another level. It's a little bit amplified with no work day the next day. So we're excited to go out there this Saturday.
Yeah, well, if you ever want to give them a losing or uncertain football experience, you can always move them to Indianapolis for a few years. We can't seem to get our stuff together.
Hey, you know what? Before I got into freight, I've never told you this. Before I got into freight, I was in equipment, a different kind of logistics. And in 2011, I worked for the Colts. So I was with the staff in 2011. Yeah. Peyton Manning and Joseph Adai and Reggie Wayne and all those guys. Bob Sanders. Sure. Bob Sanders was the guy.
It was the golden years, man.
Oh, yeah. It was a very fun organization to be a part of. It was very impressive. And the next year I worked with one of those bad Chiefs teams, and you draw comparisons naturally. But yeah, I've got a bunch of Colts gear at home.
Very cool. Very, very cool. Do you still root for them occasionally?
I don't. I don't root against them, but I thought for sure I'd come back to Kansas City and all right, they'll be my second team. And as bad as we were, I still was just, die hard. That's how I was raised, with my parents was your diehard, your city. And I naturally just went back to it. But
Very cool. Well, I know our conversation today is going to be around carrier relationships and transportation, but we had a couple of things hit, one over the weekend and one this morning, or this afternoon, rather, just about an hour ago. Did you see that DAT just acquired Trucker Tools?
I did, and we just partnered with Trucker Tools a little while ago. Exciting partnership for them. I know Carrie's going to be super thrilled. I'm excited to kind of see what the game plan is, short term and long term. But yeah, that's a big ripple here in the industry.
Yeah. I think it's a trend that we're going to continue to see, rather, is the technology consolidation. Companies just kind of circling the wagons, as it were.
Yeah, it feels like there's a more balanced approach to technology that's happening right now. There at the end of COVID, and even during COVID, it was just a tech company growing out of the ground right and left. So I know we're trying to be more fundamental and examine the vendors that we have, while also making sure we have a market edge, especially when it comes to technology.
Yeah. Very, very cool. Yeah. Another thing that hit over the weekend, this is kind of in the fraud vein, but did you see the fraud allegations come out against Cal Freight?
I haven't been able to dive into it, but I've seen the headlines. I had a couple of people send it to me right away. And I mean, yeah, it seems like we're seeing stuff like this more and more, these big ones like this, but I haven't been able to dive into it yet.
Yeah. I know we used them over at Linkage for a while, until one of our brokers got their spidey sense went off and said, "Hey, these guys, I don't feel right about them. I don't know why, but I don't." And so we stopped using them for a while. And it was around the time where all this is being alleged. So
it's so important to use your gut in all of these situations. I know we talk about that on the carrier floor. Is we're talking about a carrier for this customer, for this situation. What's the risk, this and that? And you get to a point where you're like, we've been talking about this for how long? It's probably best that we try a different route here. Sounds like that's what's going on.
Yeah. So you're the director of carrier relations over at Sethmar. So talk to us about your role over there, and what is, I guess, let's start the conversation out by finding out what is your philosophy when it comes to broker and carrier relationships, because that's really what this comes down to, I think.
Yeah, and in the same vein, so I just started. I'm starting a new role as a director of our compliance team and organizing that. That's becoming a role that's popping up here in our industry, and we feel very confident that it's a necessary role to have moving forward, especially when we're talking to our customers and our shippers. Telling them about how we examine the carrier partners and how we vet the carriers that we're sending in to pick up the awarded freight they've given us, but the freight that makes their wheels turn and keeps their lights on. So I'm excited to be diving further and further into that, and we'll see kind of where that takes me. But I'm sorry, back your original question.
Oh yeah, so guiding philosophy when it comes to broker carrier relationships, you personally, and then how do you work that out in actually live in the broker space?
So it's kind of the philosophy that, a director of mine years and years ago, back at Robinson, had told me, we want to move slow to go fast. And it's thought provoking, right? Especially when you think of brokerage world and freight world in general, how quickly things turn. I got a guy behind me. He just lost 5 loads, 5 carriers just fell off, bang, 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 right in a row. Right. And my approach to him is, this stuff's going to happen, and sometimes it's going to happen all at once. But you can't just fester in it. But when what I tell my guys a lot is, we're going to move slow to go fast. We're going to take the time to examine the details, to get details that we feel are missing from a load, whether that's going to a sales rep or them getting with me. But we're going to make sure that we slowly talk through the load before we're tendering to the carrier, because, not only do we want to make sure our expectations set, but we want to make sure that what we're saying jives with our carrier partner. Because if there's something missing, or there's not an agreement on this or that, I think it can quickly become a doomsday scenario, where you're reeling. You're wasting time where you're not, as a carrier rep, we're not booking more loads, and that carrier's truck might be stuck and they're losing money because they're not moving, right? When you hurry through things, you're just asking for more and more problems. And that's a tough thing to do, day over day, because again, in the blink of an eye, what's calm, these guys are working the board, they're moving stuff off. Now the phones are lighting up, and now there's a ton of commotion. You can hardly, hear yourself think. It's why we love brokerage. But a lot of that, you can mitigate some of that when you slow down and you make sure that you're really attentive to the details. And two, it's the safety of the carrier, and that's what's hard to push across. It's hard for me to fully understand. I've ridden in a couple trucks back in the equipment days, but I don't know, what happens in a breakdown. I haven't been around it like the carriers and the operators and the dispatchers that we talk to. I haven't been around it like that. That's their world, right? And so you really you have to make sure that everything's going to be safe for them. The weight's on point, the commodity, they know what they're hauling. And that's really what we aim to do every day, is make sure that everything's buttoned up, that we're on the same page, because at the end of it all, if we're screaming and fighting with a carrier back and forth, and there's delays and now there's threats and this and that, we're all failing altogether. So, being upfront with expectations and making sure that, hey, this is the team right here, this carrier and Sethmar Transportation, this is the team going forward that's going to deliver for the customer.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the big hot button issues when it comes to the disconnect between brokers and carriers. What's up, Jamie? Is carriers complain that brokers don't know what it's like to be a carrier. Mm-hmm. That's valid.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Likewise, carriers don't know, drivers don't know, by and large, what it takes to be a broker. Yeah. Also valid. So how do you navigate that?
Well, and we're all drawing on experiences in the past, and I think with carriers, as a broker, oh, hey man, I'm going to be late, I broke down. Well, I don't see that in real time. And I know I've had an experience where it was BS, right? And we sniffed it out and proved it. I think we quickly go to the kind of not the end of the world, but we go to a bad place just on bad experiences with the 2-3% of the broker or carrier population that is out to do things unethically, that's trying to pull one over to make money this way or that way. And I think, for me, it's letting my carrier reps get into the situation with their carriers. And I actually really like to interject and get the phone from them at some point, or have them involved in the call of getting back on the same page, trying to calm the scenario. That's, they ask me how I learned to do that over time. It's like, it's not easy to just take a step back, everyone take a breath. And that's what you got to do when things break down like they do. But I think a big issue, and our market went nuts with carriers and brokers entering during COVID, right? And a lot of them, I shouldn't say a lot of them, but there was a vast majority that were out for the wrong reasons. It was a quick buck. We don't know the industry. We're going to do things this way or that way. They're very young. And I think what we're lucky to have here at Sethmar is we have a long standing tenure throughout all of the employees here. Several have been through 10 plus years, 15, 20, up to 30 plus years of business in this industry. They know what the bad behaviors do. Brandon Cox, our president, I remember when I was a carrier rep for him at C.H. Robinson, I remember him telling you can do this or that all you want, but when you start to compound it, you start to do things habitually that, carriers are getting upset with you about, you're going to develop a name. Whether you think, hey, there's too many carriers out there, it'll never figure out. It travels fast. You can tarnish your name quickly. And so I think, doing things ethically is always at the forefront of what we're trying to do. And, sometimes the way we do things, we need to explain to the carrier and kind of tell where we're coming from, and vice versa. We got to be open-minded to the carriers too, and what they're saying and how they're traveling. They're traveling with thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds on their truck. And again, it's a situation I don't know. I've not driven a truck with that much weight. So being open-minded is a huge part of the equation when we're building trust and building relationships to ultimately succeed in our customer's goal.
Yeah. Well, and that's the entire reason why the BCS was started, right? To build relationships, to facilitate those conversations.
Mm-hmm.
I think so much of the broker carrier transaction on both sides, it comes down to honestly conflict resolution.
Yeah.
It's basically situationally being able to understand what the requirements of the load are, but also what each person in the transaction is experiencing, right?
Yeah.
So, how do your reps at Sethmar? How do you train them on bringing a level of understanding to the situations? Obviously, each situation is different,
Mm-hmm.
and if you're a carrier sales rep and you've heard, oh, I've blown a turbo, you've heard that 10 times in a day, that tends to get, you tend to lose a lot of empathy.
Yeah.
Just like I'm sure as for carriers, if you've heard, oh, the lane's not paying that
Mm-hmm.
10, 15 times a day, that can get really old really fast as well. So how do you teach your team to navigate those conversations, and what kind of drives that?
Well, we have a lot of process on my team. I'm a very process driven person. I like hard SOPs on the desk. Here's how you do this or that. But to your point here, and what I say to these guys all the time is that we're not in an industry that's black and white. It's levels of gray. And how can we mitigate the gray and make an informed decision here? And when it comes to conflict resolution, it's always, again, you step back. Let's have a communication here with the team, with the guys around. Again, different experiences from a lot of tenure here at Sethmar. Let's talk here, guys around. Hey, Carrie, we're working on this. We're going to get right back to you. Let's figure out the situation. And then as needed, I really like to get involved and continue carrier partnerships and make sure that we can level set, because you prove to carriers that you can get through this conflict resolution piece, that you can bat for them and that you've got their side, and you're proving to them that you care about their business as well. It's how we've gotten some of the great long-standing carrier partners that we have here in the office.
Yep. So let's kind of dive in on the topic of transparency, because I think one of the issues that's really, I think it's kind of sidetracked the issue, is transparency over rates and whether or not carriers or brokers are getting a fair rate for the load. As a broker, what are your overall thoughts on 49 CFR 371?
Well, initially I feel like there are bigger issues that are impacting our industry in a negative manner, that I think need to be looked at, inclusively in this. And that's not, I don't mean that to shy away from the carriers and the carriers making money. We certainly, want that. But this just seems to me, it seems like an odd topic with everything going around with fraud and determining who's a broker, who's a dispatcher, who's a carrier. Can you have multiple roles in that world, right? I feel like, there are other pieces in place first that can lead us down the path of working together, and the carriers kind of getting what they need while the brokers are getting what they need. So, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but I'm not closed-minded to why it makes sense to the carriers. I'm very curious how it could play out, who's enforcing it, right? If we give a carrier, 48 hours after the load delivers, I think that's the time limit. The carrier sees what we're being paid. They come back and renegotiate the rate, or they're going to call us upset about what we paid them. I don't think that we're going to have that issue, honestly, of paying a fair rate. It might be here and there. You can't satisfy everybody, but how does it all play out?
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the questions too. You mentioned fraud. There's a lot of people are talking about transparency being an avenue that helps prevent fraud.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that as a possible avenue?
I think it comes down to defining roles first, and who's doing what and what are the hoops that need to be jumped through to become a broker, or to get an MC, or to even buy an MC. I think that there's a long list of validation and verification that needs to happen, just so that we can set ourselves up working with the right partners. I like the idea of, highlighting ethics and who's working ethically versus who isn't. And there's a lot of subjective matter that goes into that. So, who's the FMCSA they don't have the people to enforce their rules right now. Who's going to handle all of this moving forward? But I like the idea of certifying brokers and carriers that do things ethically, and that can prove it. I think that, we know who our good partners are here. We still, we have to use the spot market like I think every broker does. And you take that risk. But, again, I think it boils down to who's doing what and how are they labeled in the industry.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned something very interesting. You said, who your good partners are here. How do you know that on the freight broker side? How do you know who your quality partners are?
Well, I think when bad situations arise, and, I hear about it in just a use case here is, if I hear something on the floor, I hear, the guy next to me talking about a breakdown, or this is going to be late. And, I naturally am like, hey man, you good? Is everything all right with this? It's when they say, oh yeah, I've been working with this guy for a while. We're all good to go. When I don't have to jump into that conflict resolution as much, that's when I know, okay, he's got it. We have a lot of very good people that work here that know how to be, and that's part of the interview process, is finding a personality, right? But it's mitigating the conflict and keeping things calm, understanding that, there's freight on this truck, and this guy's missing his next pickup because of this. Yeah. Let's make sure we get them taken care of, whether or not it's a customer approved charge or not, right? I think that all comes out in the wash at the end. And I think carriers appreciate when you don't always have to battle back on them. There's industry standards that we all adhere to, right? But we got a rep that runs a carrier. They have 20 or so trucks, and he hunts our load board all day, every day with this carrier. And when the carrier says, I need this, he finds it on our load board and he sends it over. They have such a strong relationship back and forth that my rep will get everything he can for that carrier, because he's been to his wedding. He's been to, he sends him birthday gifts, back and forth. But they don't talk rates. They send rate confirmations. They have a mutual understanding of each other. This is where the market's at. This is where I could get you. I got you a little more on this one. This one's a little bit tighter. They don't ever talk about it. And it's a relationship that's been had for 3-4 years now. And that's how it's operating. And that's so impressive to me. It makes me wonder, what do all these guys think about the transparency and the FMCSA right now?
Yeah, well, and it goes back to when I sat in the broker chair not too long ago, but I ran probably 100 loads a week out of Lyons, Kansas, and I used a total of 3 carriers. Mm-hmm. I had one primary, one secondary, and then whoever I could find on the spot board to fill the rest of them.
Yeah.
And our relationship was basically on Monday, I would call the carrier or I send them an email of all the loads that were moving that week, and ask them which ones they wanted, and they took about 30 of them. 30, 40 of them.
Yep.
And then the ones they didn't take, I sent down. I basically self-waterfalled the entire process. But it was interesting. So one of the customers that we were moving for actually sent the RFP to our carrier, the annual RFP, saying, hey, why don't you give us rates directly? And the carrier came back and said, no, I work for Dan, and I'm gonna send this over to him. And so it's interesting if there's something to be said for coerced transparency, and something else to be said entirely for voluntary transparency, because my carriers all knew what I made on the loads and they didn't care.
Right.
Because I asked them what they wanted on the load or what they needed per lane. I got them what they needed per lane, and they didn't care if I made money on the load. That's how I stayed in business. That's how I kept my job, and that's how they kept their trucks moving. So I think
I
a
hope.
larger,
Go ahead. Sorry.
this is a larger question for me is, what role do we want the government to have to play in forcing businesses to share information with each
Yeah.
other?
No, I agree completely. And just backing up a bit to, what you're saying about Lions, Kansas. I had a college roommate from Lions, Kansas.
That's
But
random.
it makes me think your approach there. It makes me think of, when I'm at Robinson and we had a customer that 20 loads a day that came down, and I pretty well cornered the carrier market for the lane. But what I learned, again, through Brandon Cox and his experiences, what I was able to learn was it's easy to just, hey, you've got 12 trucks, here are 12 of the loads, right? And what we do there, and what I learned is you put the carrier in a bad position. When you stretch them as thin as they can possibly go, you're putting them in a bad position to fail. Whereas you give them 10 loads to fill their 12 trucks, even though they want 12, now you give them a little bit of flex. This truck broke down on the way to the shipper. We have that other one. I actually didn't get him on unload yet. We have that other truck. We're going to send him in. And I think that that's something, that's a conversation that brokers should be having is, yeah, it sounds great to move it all with one carrier, and that works. It works as well. But are you stretching your carrier too thin? Are you setting them up to fail, to strain the relationship, to tarnish relationship then with the customer? And now you're in separate camps. This guy's looking for capacity again. Now we're trying to win business back. It steamrolls, right? And so I think that you got to have a two-prong approach with the awarded business, and we try to do that the best we can.
Yeah, well, that gets to another common, I think, accurate complaint that carriers have with brokers is that because that requires the broker rep to have a certain level of business acumen, a certain level of experience and understanding, and not just of interpersonal relationships, but also business in general. And one of the common complaints from carriers and drivers is that you get a lot of people out of college don't know essentially their ass from a hole in the ground and trying to figure out life on their own and try and throw them into a broker seat and and have them figure it out. And that's one of the things I think it gives brokers a bad look is when a lot of inexperienced people try and game the system, as it were.
Yeah, and I've been in that chair. I mean, out of college, and hey, I'm sitting on this floor. Everybody's like yelling and screaming, and this guy was getting after a carrier with it a little bit ago, and we were all kind of, I think you can quickly kind of fall into that, but everybody's got it. I think you have to be in this industry, multiple years to really go back and think through some of the way you did things and then learn from it and draw on the experience. But I mean, I had the same thing. I didn't do things as well as I do now in the past, and I certainly hope in the future here that I do things better than I do now.
Yeah, well, and that's why we're taking the position that we are, or me personally, I guess, as the Broker Carrier Summit, is that transparency itself is not the answer people are looking for, right? I think it's what people want, but a lot of times what people want is not what is needed. What is the answer is, I think, what we're talking about, and it's the mutually agreeable solutions that are being developed between brokers and carriers on a day-to-day basis that builds that trust. You can't coerce trust.
Right.
And I think a lot of people, especially on the carrier side, think that when they are able to finally get the information that they want, that trust is going to magically appear. I don't believe that it will. I think it'll just, because if you have to force trust, it's not actually trust.
Yeah, I think there's a misunderstanding too of what trust is, and I think that building relationships is certainly now different than it was in the past. It boils down to it's just like anybody that you're going to interact with, outside of work, even though being a freight broker doesn't stop. But that interaction, you get to know them, and there's a human touch there, and on the front end is where we try to be, with getting to know their business. And, what I've always been told in the past is, find a carrier. Yeah, the carrier likes this lane and that lane and that lane, but what's their biggest pain point? What's the biggest hurdle that they face on a day-to-day basis, a weekly basis, right? What's one of their annual goals, right? And I think that creates an advantage and a care on the carrier side when our team starts to ask those questions, and vice versa. Carriers asking us, what are you trying to do with this, right? And the easy answer is, grow, get more customer freight and keep growing and growing and growing. But, oftentimes it's hard, again, to slow down and have those conversations in a world that's moving 1,000,000 miles an hour. But I'm with you. It can't be coerced.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's one. So Jamie Anderson has a good question. He says, do you think the transparency you provided voluntarily contributed to the strong relationships you have with your carriers? And the answer to that is 1,000,000% yes.
Yeah,
it absolutely is. But the nuance in there is I volunteered it.
Right.
That's what created that level of trust.
And just because you're transparent doesn't mean that you just get the trust right then and there, right? Because in a negotiation game, right, there's a back and forth, and people say what they want, but you have to prove it consistently over and over. And that's back to my point earlier, where you do things a certain way and you think you're sneaking by, it is going to catch up to you. And people are going to find, well, he says they're making this every time, and now I'm finding out this because of, this happened or that happened, or he's stuck in a hole where he doesn't have my truck and I see him doing, this guy's paying this over here. You got to do things consistently.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there wasn't that underlying level of suspicion with that carrier either, because they didn't ask for my rates. They all they were concerned about, and this is one of the reasons I said what I said, was because you have to know your own costs as a business owner. And if you know your own costs and you price your service accordingly, where you can make money, then you win. If you price your service accordingly and you're not making money, it's one thing to blame, the market, one thing to blame brokers, one thing to blame DAT or load boards or whatever. But at the end of the day, I think it comes down to knowing what it costs to operate your business. Tom Smiley says, do you walk into an Apple store and demand to know the cost of an Apple product? No, because I know they're marking that up like 5,000%.
Man, I wish I knew that.
Let's talk about Apple's price gouging. Let's talk about that.
That's right.
Was the new iPhones what, like $2,000?
Yeah, I mean, they're computers now. They're absolutely computers. And it's been years now, but when they start saying it has more technology than the first space shuttles, you're like,
that's
all right,
great.
yeah.
But if it can launch me into space, I'm down for it. But
I also appreciate the comment. Trust isn't a transaction; it's a two-sided relationship. And
Shimmy Munson,
and that's what it is. It's realizing that you're in a team. I mean, we're in a team sport here, carrier and broker, to get this done, and we both suffer when things collapse. So how are we going to get out of it together? And sometimes it works out, and you got a stronger relationship because of it. Sometimes one side chooses a way over the other, and it there's a little more friction and it doesn't work out. At the end of the day, carriers have the right to work with whatever brokers they want. And us as brokers, we can work with the carriers that we want. And I've got to examine that every day when it comes to the awarded customer freight we have, the risk and the expectations that were set in our corner by our customer.
Yeah. Well, I love the fact that trust and respect are two-way streets, right? You can't demand trust and then not give it. You can't demand respect and not give it. I think one of the things that will be, especially the rule changes as they are proposed, I think is just going to exaggerate the distrust that currently exists, because I was having a conversation with Jamie actually over LinkedIn, which I rarely do, because well, it's obvious. It just gets long, and I end up not doing my actual job. But you'll have the opportunity, the situation where carriers are going to start demanding, records or whatever they're going to demand, and then brokers are just going to not work with them. And the carriers are going to get pissed off at them. I think this is going to create just different ways to pick at the same issue. And the rules as they're proposed, I don't think they'll actually effectuate what carriers or owner operators are wanting.
There's a strain on both sides that's going to occur, I think. And I think that's what, people need to realize is, as a carrier, when that cost, again, what are you going to do with it? And as a broker, what does it mean for you when you're trying to go get more freight in a market where now your rates have been published out there, right? And you're trying to get more rate for the relationships that you have in house that rely on you. Now it's a little bit harder there, and it just keeps going down the line.
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing. I go into AT&T or I go into Verizon or wherever, and I say, hey, I want this iPhone. I know you have it for $2,000. I want it for $1,000. I know it costs you $5 to make. They're going to tell me to pound sand.
Yeah.
Because I don't, it's not like I can go in and change the price of the iPhone just by going in and demanding a different price. I think that's, again, it's not going to, there's a meme or the scene in The Princess Bride where the guy's like, I don't think it means what you think it means. I think that's what we feel about like transparency. Shimmy says, I feel like during all this broker transparency arguing, the business aspect is lost, and the fact that ethical business is truly what should be in question and not rates. I agree.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Yeah. And just what he's saying at the end there, again, you get 2, 3, 4, whatever the percent is, there are bad brokers and bad carriers. Absolutely. 100%. What process do you have in place? What's your mindset? What's your goals and what's your goals with the business? And that's exactly what he's saying. I couldn't agree with it more.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, very, very cool. Hey, I want to ask you a question real quick. So Paul Sutton Bourbon, you saw you guys moved a load for them or a couple loads for their, did they launch a new reserve there?
You broke up there, so I missed the name.
Sorry, Paul Sutton Bourbon. Did you guys move loads for them?
We may have. We're moving them. We're doing good business there with Kentucky right now.
Yeah, I think I saw a post on I think it was LinkedIn or Facebook where they rolled out a new bottle, and you guys, that's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, it's cool, and it's cool every now and then. Vendors like that we have, we get a little bit of that around the holiday season here. Some of our wine distributors will send us cases or a pallet of wine, and so it's always it's fun in the office when
that's a good perk
when you get to start. Yeah, you get to connect the dots. This is a real product. It's not on a computer screen. And we want to do the same with the carriers. Big supporter of the BCS, Blake LePan and Spot On. Blake I've met with Blake twice now here in Kansas City since the Kansas City Summit, and he's invited me to open the doors for the guys here in my office to go see their operations, see their trucks, learn how they're doing their business, and connect. And Blake's been a fantastic partner. We move more and more freight. Anytime that we have something that fits his network, we get in touch with Blake and his team before we move forward. That's partnership. That's the trust back and forth. He wants the best for us, and we want the best for him. And we're certainly grateful for what Spot On does for us, and hope that continues to grow.
Yeah, I love Blake. He's a great guy. He ran one of our the offsite happy hours for Fort Worth, and he packed that place out. It was great.
He's his personality, man. You're just drawn. I could talk to him for hours and hours, and not think twice. And I went to happy hour with him and got in trouble with my wife because I get carried away listening to everything he has to say. He's a good dude. We couldn't appreciate him more. Yeah,
very cool. Well, are we going to see you guys in Indianapolis?
Yeah, I should be up there. I'm going to work on getting some of the carrier guys up there, and that experience it's almost second to none right now. The connections that you make with carriers. And what my favorite thing about my approach at the BCS, every event you guys have had is, this is, transparently, this is how I run my process with the carrier team and the carrier vetting. And this is how we do this and that. Where am I wrong? Again, I don't drive trucks. I'm not around them. I see them on the highway. Where are my intuitions wrong? Where I gotten some information in the past that maybe isn't on brand with what you guys are looking for, how you operate things. I know inspections is a big one. Those were long conversations that we had down in Fort Worth, me and a few other carriers down there. Hey, I don't have an inspection. Here's a picture of my truck, badass looking truck. I keep it clean. I upgrade it. I'm proud of it. I'm not the guys that are getting pulled over on the highway, so I don't have inspection. But here is, and this guy sent me all kinds of reports, maintenance and audits that he's done. He sent me everything, every number and transaction that he had gone through to make sure that he was meeting the standard. He was happy to just give that over to me. And I've been talking to him for an hour.
I think I know the exact guy you're talking to, because I had a couple of conversations with him as well. He's an Indiana guy.
Yeah. He, those are worthwhile conversations to make sure that we're on the ball and that we're looking at things through their scope. And, I'm happy to share with them, with the carriers down at BCS, again, this is our process. This is how I do things, because I want to get on the same page and make sure I know that with rule sets and all the vetting tools, you can't be too careful, but my processes here are going to protect Sethmar and the customers. And I know I'm probably going to shut out a few really good, strong carriers. But where can I open a little bit of a gap for these guys and understand better the rules that I'm enforcing on a day-to-day basis? So, they're valuable. And when it comes to hauling, they're valuable in our vetting, in our market rates, the ones that we trust and work with regularly, they're giving us that information on top of what we find from our vendors.
Yeah. Well, that's the kind of environment we're trying to create. I mean, again, I tell people this all the time. Like, I don't have all the answers. I may act like I do or sound like I do sometimes, but I don't. I think having that humility of saying, hey, like you just laid out, going to the carriers at the BCS and saying, hey, here's what we do. Help us make it better for you as a carrier. Help us make it better for you. What do we need to do? That level of humility, that level of vulnerability and transparency, if we're being accurate, I think is one of the things that we've been missing for a long time. And a lot of people are content to have the government or rely on the government to mandate things like transparency, but they're not willing to actually go out individually and do it for themselves. And that's what the conversation that we're trying to change. So appreciate you guys as being involved with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to getting back. And it's been 13 years now since I've been back to Indianapolis. I will tell you, I went to the Indy 500 by myself while I was up there and just fell in love with it. My dad, my uncles, my grandfather, they had all been years and years ago when I was very young. And ever since I went, we host an Indy 500 party in Kansas City every year. We draw the drivers, we have a prop board and everything. So we, once you go to that Indy 500, you're a lifer.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Unless you live in Indianapolis for your entire life, then you go to the race once and you're like, yeah, I did the thing.
Yeah.
It's funny. A lot of people who live in Indianapolis are like,
yeah,
I can go, I can't go. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We'll let the tourists go to the snake pit this time.
That's the snake pit, man. The snake pit's a spot.
Say they spend a month sanitizing that thing afterward. It's crazy.
It is. It fits the name, that's for sure.
Yeah. Very cool, my friend. Wait, it's always great talking with you. Look forward to seeing you and your guys in Indianapolis, and bring your carriers with you. That's one of the things I tell brokers all the time. Hey, make this summit a value add for your carriers. Make it a service that you offer to them, saying, hey, we want to invest in you. You guys are going to benefit from this. Come on our dime, or let us help you out. Let the BCS help you out. We have scholarships available for carriers to come. We want everybody to benefit from what we have going on. So look forward to seeing you guys in Indianapolis in April.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dan, thank you to you and to Trey for the invite and connecting. And we just appreciate here at Sethmar, we appreciate everything that you guys are doing with the BCS, opening doors that we never walked through before. So we certainly appreciate all the help, and can't express our gratitude enough to you guys.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you very much. Take care, and we'll talk soon.
Have a good day.
You too. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Obviously, we were two brokers talking about transparency. If you want to hear the other side of the coin, I am meeting with 4 carriers on Thursday. Among them, I believe, will be Jamie Anderson, Jamie Hagan, Steve Talamo, and I'm forgetting one. Maybe Ilya Denisenko will join us as well. But love to get your thoughts on, again, broker transparency, broker relationships. Is transparency the answer that everyone's looking for? I personally do not think it is. But again, Dan Lindsey does not have a corner on the market of all the good ideas, and I'm not always right. Anyway, thank you all for joining us. If you have not already, go ahead and visit our website, www.brokercarriersummit.com. Sign up for our newsletter. You can also register for the Indianapolis Summit, taking place April 28th to May 2nd in my hometown, Indianapolis, Indiana, at the historic Union Station and Crown Plaza. We would love to have you guys there. Until then, take care, everybody. Be well.